Now to northern Kosovo, where dozens of people have been injured in clashes between Kosovan Serbs and police and NATO peacekeepers. Serbs make up the majority in the area and are angry about recently elected ethnic Albanian mayors. NATO says around 25 peacekeepers were hurt in unprovoked attacks. Unrest broke out in several towns, including Zvecan. Kosovo and its neighbour Serbia accuse each other of provoking the latest in a long line of disputes.
NATO peacekeepers and Kosovo police pulled injured officers to safety as protests spun out of control. Ethnic Serb demonstrators earlier refused to move for Kosovar police vehicles. Witnesses say peacekeepers used tear gas and stun grenades to clear the protesters, who responded by throwing rocks, bottles, and even explosives. Cars were also set alight as demonstrators demanded the removal of ethnic Albanian mayors, who were elected by just 3.5% of voters. Kosovo accuses Serbia of influencing ethnic Serbs to destabilize the country. Serbia's president blamed Kosovo's prime minister for the unrest.
All this was designed by Albin Kurti because of his desire to start a conflict between the Serbs and NATO, so that he could wash his hands of the whole thing.
A string of incidents going back years has strained relations between the two neighbors. EU and US officials have criticized Kosovo's leaders for running the controversial elections.
Well, I just met with President Osmani at her request. We're talking about the situation right now in the north and our shared concern of the prospect of violence and the need to de-escalate.
Serbia has now put its military on high alert, fueling fears of further instability in Europe.
DW's Idro Seferi joins me now from Belgrade. How much concern is there on both sides that this conflict could escalate even further?
Well, I could say that these are repeating pictures that we saw also during the last year, and it's not the first time we are coming to a point like this, but it's the first time in a longer period that we had injured people in the field, and especially NATO soldiers, and this made the situation even more serious. Of course, Kosovo and Serbia mostly they clash over in the north of Kosovo, and it's related to the dialogue. But we have seen incidents like this with different reasons lately a lot, and that's why people are concerned, and they don't know how this is going to develop, as Serbia has its army in the border, and also Kosovo doesn't give up to implement the results of elections.
Can you just remind us, why do most ethnic Serbs in Kosovo not accept living under a government in Pristina?
Well, during the EU dialogue between Kosovo and Serbia, there was an agreement to create a so-called Association of Serbian Municipalities, where the Serbs are majority. But this didn't happen because there were opposing in Kosovo, and especially by the Prime Minister Albin Kurti, who back then was in opposition. But the EU made an agreement, and it was signed in North Macedonia in March to move things forward and to make peace between two countries. But it seems that now we don't have exactly the result of it, because even it was pushed hard to make this agreement and to make normalization of relations. Still, we are seeing this footage from the north, and the situation, it's very fragile, I would say, almost all the time.
That doesn't sound like you expect tensions to settle anytime soon.
Having in mind that last times they were taking weeks to settle the problem, it's not solved because Serbs don't accept the mayors that were elected only by 3% of the voters there, and without a political agreement, I don't know how it's gonna end up, but there is a hope because President Vučić in Serbia is meeting today with the ambassadors of Western powers, and also maybe tomorrow in Bratislava there will be a meeting where President Vučić and Prime Minister Kurti could also meet, facilitated by European Union, and maybe this could help, but only with intervention from EU and Brussels.
How could that help? What sort of outcome do you expect from that meeting?
Well, I think if they would pressure both sides to sit and talk and to solve the problems, Serbs are requesting the association where they would gain more rights. Also, Kosovo wants to implement the elections, but Serbs left the institutions there, and without making a compromise between both sides about this, it's not possible to have like long-term peace there because nothing will change in the field by using the force.
Idris Saferi in Belgrade, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm joined now by Florian Bieber, Professor of Southeast European History and Politics at the University of Graz. How much concern is there on both sides that this conflict could escalate further?
Well, I think we have to keep in mind that the likelihood of Serbian army units crossing the border into Kosovo is extremely low, considering that Kosovo falls under the KFOR internationally mandated peacekeeping operation led by NATO. So I think what is more likely is to see these kind of clashes we've seen yesterday repeated if there isn't a de-escalation by both the Kosovo government and the Serbian government. And I think that's where the direction of the international efforts are going. But that in itself is very destabilizing, both for Kosovo and for the whole region. So I don't think we're going to see a kind of a full-scale conflict, but what is going on now has repercussions for both countries.
Can you give me a bit more background? Why did the majority Kosovan Serbs boycott last month's local election when it meant ethnic Albanians taking control of local councils, basically their plan backfiring on them?
Well, I mean, I think the point is that those institutions and the elected mayors really lack democratic legitimacy. They were elected by, such a low turnout, well below 10%. I mean, in some cases, like the town of Zvecan, where we saw the protests and riots yesterday, turnout was, around 3%. So literally 100 people or so voted in a mayor. That hardly gives the mayor any democratic legitimacy, considering the boycott. Now, Serbs boycotted it partly on Belgrade's instructions. They insisted that there should be first some kind of association of Serb municipalities set up. This has been part of an agreement between Serbia and Kosovo. And Kosovo pushed for those elections because since Serbs walked out in the fall, there have been no locally elected legitimate authorities. So in that sense, we have a stalemate. And the EU celebrated a few months ago an agreement between Serbia and Kosovo, but it turned out to be a very hollow agreement. And that's what we're seeing in practice now. So the EU and the US have kind of lost their leadership in trying to negotiate a proper way forward between the two countries.
And can you also explain what role the Kosovan Serbs play in Serbian domestic politics?
Well, it's less that they play a big role in domestic Serb politics. I mean, their number is fairly small, a few tens of thousands. It's more the other way around, that Serbia, and particular President Vučić, exerts great control over the Serb community. So while many Kosovo Serbs were frustrated with the steps by the Kosovo government, their nearly complete boycott was also due to fear because the Serbian political party in the north is controlled by Belgrade, has strong controls to the kind of underground and criminal underground as well, and security structures. So that means that President Vučić has complete control in the north and gives very little wiggle room to local Serbs to also articulate their own political concerns.
Florian Bieber in Graz, thank you very much.
Thank you.